Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to JKWD Podcast. Wow, I hope you're doing great. Kelvin, what's going on, man?
I wasn't expecting that, but anyway, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Life is good. I'm healthy. It's hot. It's Savannah in up here. But the sky is blue and the grass is green and life is good. So I'm having a wonderful time.
Great. Yeah, we're expecting our first heat wave. Heat wave. I think is technically classified as a string of 3 days over 90 degrees. So we're expecting that over the next couple of days.
I'll stay here. Thanks.
By the time people hear that,
it'll be over.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah. But yeah, we're getting into that season. It's all right. Better than shoveling, I do have to say. It's not a. I used to say when it got to like 15 below and it was snowing outside, I used to say it's an event to go outside. It's like you'd be all warm and then you'd have to put on 3 layers and then a jacket and then get the gloves and the scarf and the hat and possibly a face mask. And then you'd have to take off half the stuff because you forgot to tie your shoes before you put it all on. And then you'd have to put it back on, and then you'd have to take half of it back off because you need your fingers to work a leash. And then
strangely enough, I still enjoy that. I don't know how much longer I'll enjoy that, if it will become cumbersome soon, but I'm still good for that for now. And I suppose when I stop enjoying that,
there'll be time to do something else.
Do something else. We'll figure that out, But anyway, but I am having a good time. Glad to be hanging out with you again.
Yes, sir.
So what, tell our folks who we got coming on today.
Well, we've got Mark Henson, author of Ordinary Superpowers. That's Mark. We didn't even ask him if he was related to the Muppet family.
I think it would have come out in the book if it had been.
Maybe.
Do you know the Swedish Chef? No.
But markhenson.me. It's markhenson.me, and that'll be in the show notes and everything. But we should mention that we're brought to you today by Audible. If you want a free audiobook and a free month at Audible, go to audibletrial.com/JKWD. That's audibletrial.com/JKWD, or text JKWD to 500-500. And hopefully by this time, Ordinary Superpowers will be on Audible. If you want to get that for free, you can do that.
Hopefully.
And if it's not, then still sign up today and try again next week, because that free month is good for a month.
There you go. I like that. So that'll be cool. So it was a very nice podcast today. It's some lively conversation, and I think you're really going to like this guy. And not only that, I think he's going to help you discover some awesome stuff about yourself that you didn't quite realize.
Yeah, I love these podcasts where we don't have to. Some guests you kind of have to get going. You got to kind of introduce yourself and explain what it's going to be like, and kind of warm them up a little bit. And this is one where, I love these, where we can just start talking, and eventually we're going to have to figure out, and by we, I mean you, because Kelvin handles the audio, going to have to decide where we started the thing.
Yep.
But we had a great conversation. I think he picked up a little bit on our vibe. He made a black and white joke, which,
he did.
Love to do a lot. Which, we love to do. We usually do a black guy and a Jew, but same concept.
Yeah. You're still white.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep. So with
anyway, for that, here's some music, and on the other side of it, you'll hear Mark. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Josh and Kelvin World Domination Podcast, where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate you taking the time to interview me. So.
Yeah, and I mean, it took us a long time to hook up. Sorry for that.
Year and a half, right, to get you.
I mean, mostly it was me having a surgery and then going out of town, and then also giving us time to read the book. We both read the book. So
nice, and that's rare. That's very rare, actually. This might be a really tough interview compared to most.
No,
you'll know if I'm lying or not.
Well, let me start by asking you what made you want to write this book?
I've been a writer for a long time. I've been writing blogs since blogs were a thing. Before that, I was actually a copywriter, and I spent a lot of time in radio and broadcasting. And so I've been writing my whole life pretty much. And I've done a lot of writing for my own business. And all along that way, everybody that I would run into or that would read my blog posts or follow what I was doing, they would always say, "You should write a book. You should write a book." And I tried several times to start writing a book, and I just couldn't ever get past maybe one or two chapters until I went through this experience a few years ago where I was really struggling, and I figured out a way to walk myself out of that struggle, and it ended up being eventually the topic of this book. And it was the first thing that I really felt really connected to and passionate about enough, and just felt like I could really take it all the way through. And it was really actually, the writing part was actually pretty easy at that point to get that all onto paper. It took a long time, but it was easy at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I keep hearing that it's time to write a book when it's easier to get it out than keep it in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of how I felt about this.
And so how did you come across the concept of ordinary superpowers? I mean, you write about coaching in the book. So was that kind of how you stumbled across this?
Yeah, I actually had been in a coaching program called Strategic Coach a few years ago, and a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs, particularly in the finance and insurance fields, go through this program. And then a large handful of other people like myself who is in a completely different industry than finance and insurance. But part of that program was really focusing on your greatest strengths. They call it your unique ability, and trying to weed out as much non-unique ability activity in your life as you can and focus really on your strengths. And I know a lot of other people talk about that as well, but it was the first time I really sat down and tried to really figure out what are my true strengths, what are my greatest assets that I bring to work, to life, to the people around me. And spending time doing that changed the trajectory that I was on, because I had been on this sort of a plateaued trajectory, I guess, for a while. I'd built my business over a decade or so, and then I kind of fell into this slump. I'm a creator-builder type, and I love to create. I love to build. I love new things. I love novel things. And after about 10 years of my business, I slid into being the administrator manager of my business, and I was no longer doing that stuff that really lights me up. The problem is sort of like that old analogy of the frog in the hot water, is like I didn't realize that I was slowly dying inside by doing that, because I was pouring myself into it and I was doing a pretty decent job at it. My business was still growing, all of that, but I was just becoming less and less alive over time. And it wasn't until I finally looked back at my strengths and said, oh my gosh, I'm not spending hardly any time doing the things that really light me up and where I contribute the best to the people in the world around me. And so I've refocused my life, and I started doing more of that, and I started getting happier and happier and more excited. And kind of looking back now, the part of that story that I've discovered is that I actually was in a long-term low-level depression because of that shift that I went through where I started being the administrator manager and stopped doing the things that light me up. You do that long enough and you start to lose passion for everything in your life. And so going through that whole process there, discovering that for myself, then I wanted to turn around and share that concept with other people. And I've always talked about superpowers. I'm the guy who sits next to you on the airplane and asks you, what's your superpower, long before I wrote this book, just as a conversation starter. And because I like to know what really lights people up. What do they love to do? What are they really good at doing? Because I like to connect with those people too. Don't we all like to work with those kind of people? We like to have those kind of people as a resource. We look for the ones that are really, have some special ability in some area. And whenever we can use those or connect to those, we will.
Now, did you grow up a superhero fan? I mean, I see, people can't see us, but there's Wonder Woman and Captain America on the wall behind you. I can't see who's directly behind your head, but you got that, and you're Iron Man, and then
Iron Man, yeah.
You write a little bit about it in the book, and you connected to Batman because Batman's just a guy in a mask. He's
just a regular, ordinary, everyday billionaire, just like you and me, right?
Right. Someday.
Give me a month. Give me one more month.
Right, Captain America's got the shield, and Wonder Woman's got the bracelets, and Iron Man's got the suit. But Batman really
the bracelets is what you noticed about Wonder Woman?
Well, isn't that her?
It is, but that's not what I look at when I look at Wonder Woman.
No. But I started at that ankle. Excuse me, what I said.
So many other assets to look at.
There you go. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Crown was really good.
But yeah, to answer your question, I loved superheroes as a kid. I've had kind of a lifelong fascination with it. And what's funny is right now, even though I have artwork in my office and all of that, I actually try to downplay the superhero part of it because that's very aspirational and it's very supernatural and all of that for the most part. I use a lot of examples of superheroes just as a way to connect on a common ground with people. But when I talk about the superpowers, it's always I refer to it as ordinary superpowers. That's the title of the book and what I focus on in the work because you and I might not have supernatural superpowers. I mean, I'm not denying they exist. I think LeBron James is a great example of somebody with supernatural superpowers, right? And everybody who ever wins American Idol probably has a little bit of supernatural superpowers, those kind of people. But for you and me, we might not have those. So what do? So we have these other strengths, abilities, talents, skills that are elevated that, help us kind of succeed in the world. And I call those our ordinary superpowers. I was also a huge Star Wars fan as a kid. And I kind of consider them to be superheroes as well. Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Those were my superheroes also as a kid.
But you did a good job of. I can tell that Josh is excited about this because he didn't even look at me to ask a question once. So I know he's having a good day, right?
I figure you're just going to jump in at some point. But
he's normally the low key kind of really methodical guy, and I'm all over the board, and he's just whooping my butt today. I had to get in here so I could say one thing, and then I'll probably quiet for the rest of the podcast. But you did a nice job in the book of letting us know that a lot of people who have superpowers, things that end up being superpowered, things that gives them most of their power, they just think is ordinary stuff, which I know that's how you got to the thing. Wonder Woman had powers that did really cool stuff, but she just thought it was normal, everybody should do it. And the whole secret, the Superman thing was he had powers, he could do stuff, and like, oh well, that's kind of weird, so I'm not going to do that. But we all have, or most of us anyway, have stuff that really affects other people and our own psyches that we just downplay as being, that's just the way I am, when it really could be like genius, wonderful stuff.
Yep. I mean, I've heard it referred to as, you've heard the term zone of genius, right? Your strength, superpowers, whatever. They're all kind of interchangeable terms for me. But you're absolutely right about that feeling of feeling ordinary. And even in superhero stories, if you think about the origin story of almost every superhero, and they're playing those out in the movies all the time now, the origin story of almost every superhero is that there's a point where they recognize that they're different. But up until that point, they thought it was kind of normal. Like Superman thought it was kind of normal living on the farms of Iowa, that he could do the things he could do. And then one day he asked his dad, like, I think there's something different about me. And then, Dad, Kevin Costner in the latest superhero series, Superman series, has to sit him down and say, son, there's something special about you. Because he's like, I don't quite get it. I don't understand. I have some abilities, but I don't quite know what to do with them. And, Dad says, well, you're an alien. That's why. And we all have these abilities. We might not be aliens, most of us, but we have these abilities that are elevated levels in us and that help us do amazing things. But they're so wired into us. It's just kind of how we operate, how we roll, that it feels very normal to us, feels very ordinary. And part of my work is I want to wake people up to the fact that it's a lot less ordinary than you think. You don't have the same abilities and talents and skills, and certainly not the combination of skills and abilities and talents that almost anybody else have. It's like a fingerprint for you.
Yeah.
You have 2 or 3 of these, awesome abilities that, especially in combination, make you incredibly unique in the types of things that you can do, what you can achieve, the results you can get, etc.
And society also teaches us, not to be special. Don't think you're special.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
No.
It's beat out of us as kids. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, fit in, conform, don't rock the boats, learn how to play by the rules, all of that stuff. Yeah. And using your abilities and talents is not necessarily breaking the rules, but it's also stepping out of the norm for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's
good.
I think it's a little bit also, something that your book kind of brings to mind is taking what you know to be your strengths, right? You go to a job interview, and one of the things they ask you is, what are your strengths? And those might be your ordinary superpowers, right? But your question is one of the questions you sort of pose, and you can leave it open, is this workplace the best use of your ordinary superpowers, or should you kind of look around? Who else can use these, and what should you be doing with them, and why?
Yeah, it's a real dilemma for a lot of people, that they always feel like, if I'm not using my superpowers or my strengths, maybe I'm in the wrong place. And I think certainly that can be the case, but I also am a big believer that you can make the grass greener right where you are. You don't necessarily have to jump the fence. If you can find opportunities to leverage who you are authentically at work, then you can make it whatever you want it to be. The problem is, a lot of people don't have the nerve to explore that for themselves, and they don't have the nerve to talk to their boss about it. I've talked to, or they've made an assumption. That's even worse, I think. I've talked to so many people when we talk about their superpowers, and I say, well, have you ever talked to your boss about this? Or have you ever approached your company about leveraging your talents or your strengths in a different way than the role that you're currently in? And they immediately say, oh, they would never do that. Or they will never do that, or they'll never treat me like that, or those opportunities don't exist where I am, but they've never asked. And that's really sad, because I think some people, they think that they can only find happiness somewhere else. And then they go through the process and they go to another company and they're happy for a while because it's new and novel. And then after a while, it settles back into the same kind of thing. And then they're stuck again. Instead of if you really kind of figured out who you are, what you're really capable of, and what you love doing the most, and then if you can do it where you are, do it there. It's so much easier than jumping through all those hoops to move to other places and do other things. I did have, however, somebody who was out of work recently, who her job was downsized. And just last week, I got this email from her and she said, Mark, I got a job and it is such a perfect fit for me. And I brought your book up even in the interview when we were talking about my strengths. And she said, we had this whole conversation about what my superpowers are. And that is part of what helped me get the job. And I thought, oh, that's amazing that it really worked that way for you. And just the fact that she was able to communicate those strengths in an interview to somebody, that helped her find that really good fit. And it helped them decide, are you a good fit for this job or not? Because she was very honest and authentic, because she had done the work to really identify, these are my real true superpowers. This is how I contribute the best wherever I am. And if that works for you, hire me. If that doesn't, hire somebody else. That's fine. And I think we're all happier when we fit those situations like that.
So how do we find our how do we pick them out? How do we find our superpowers?
I think you have to go through a process of elimination. And I actually have developed something after I wrote the book. I use the basis of what's in the book. I have these 6 questions that help you discover what your superpowers are. And by exploring those 6 questions, you can then start narrowing down to what your superpowers are. And I use this tool called the Superpower Pinpointer now. And I'll kind of walk you just briefly through it if you want to do that. Does that sound?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first thing to do is to kind of ask yourself these 6 questions. And to be honest with you, my brain, the way it works is once something goes out of my brain, it is gone forever. So I always have to look up the questions in the book myself. So,
I thought it was just me.
I mean, I kind of loosely know them, but like I forget the order, all of that stuff. And yeah. People think that authors just know their material inside and out, and I don't necessarily think that.
And you know what you did until you hit publish, and it was gone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just kind of give you these 6 questions, and I'll tell you what. There's a free chapter. This is out of chapter 4 of the book, and it's the chapter that I give away. You know how authors will give away a chapter of the book, and it's like the intro, and it doesn't really give you anything. I made this weird decision to give away probably the most important chapter of the book, which is the one that helps people to start discovering their superpowers. So it's chapter 4 called Discover Your Ordinary Superpowers. And these 6 questions are in there. So you guys can have that link, or I can even throw it out now if they want. It's just at markhenson.me/free chapter. And then you can download this chapter. But the chapter has these 6 questions. Number 1, what are you always doing? Sort of left to your own devices, and in any given situation where you find yourself, like in a staff meeting or any new area of responsibility you might enter at work or on a new project, what's the role that you always seem to play? What do you always end up doing? Are you the one who's always brainstorming? Are you the one who's always organizing things? Are you the one who's always mediating? Like, what is it that you always find yourself doing? So that's question number 1. And feel free to jump in and ask me questions along the way if you need clarification.
No problem.
Second question, what do people always ask you for help with? We all have those things that people tend to come to us over and over for help with. If you are the kind of person who loves to organize things, maybe people come to you and ask you for help making spreadsheets or something. For me, people always come to me and ask me about technology because they know I'm really good at fixing technology problems. Even though that's not really one of my superpowers, it is something I would write down if I was answering these questions. They also come to me for help with brainstorming and idea generation, which is one of my superpowers. So that also would answer the question too. Question 3 is, what do you always feel compelled to volunteer for? And that's a question like when you're in a PTA meeting or you're at church and you're on some committee and they ask for volunteers. I always say that there are 2 things we volunteer for. The first one is that thing that no one else is volunteering for, and we feel like the meeting needs to move on, so we volunteer. That's not the one I'm talking about. The one I'm talking about is when they ask for a volunteer for something and you raise your hand because you know you could do it with your eyes closed because it just plays to your strengths. So like for me, if I'm in one of those situations and they say, hey, we need somebody who can make the announcements over a microphone in front of an auditorium full of people, I'll raise my hand every time because I actually enjoy that. And I know tons of other people that would just die if they had to do that. I've also discovered that communicating through writing and speaking is one of my superpowers, so I will raise my hand for something like that every time. Fourth question, what do you do that other people admire? And that's basically, what do people compliment you about? What do they thank you for when you do it? Those are easy ways to identify the things people admire in you, because when people really, so especially when they profusely thank you for something, like, thank you so much for doing that. Oh, that was such a big help. That kind of stuff. Or you're so good at that thing. I could have never done that. They're giving you this clue that you have an ability that they probably don't have. And you probably have an elevated level of that. So that's question number 4. What do you do that other people admire? Question 5, what do you do that makes a positive difference? And this is one of those ones I think that was beat out of us as kids too, where we are not allowed to recognize what's really good, or when we do a really good job, or what we're really proud of, or what makes a difference. We certainly should never, ever say that out loud, even if we think it in our head. So
you're
even
conceited. You're conceited. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that a lot.
Yeah. So, so if you have to answer that one in your head, just quietly in your head, just do that. What do you do that you know makes a positive difference in the life of other people? And the last question is, what do you enjoy doing most in the whole world? It's a little different from the first question of what are you always doing, because that's sort of like, what do you always find yourself doing, right? The last question is, if you had all the time and money in the world, like, what would you do with it? How would you spend it after you ate all the lobster dinners you could eat and bought all the Maseratis you wanted to drive? And what would you do with your time? What skills, talents, abilities would you want to put into practice every day? Like, what would really light you up, because you'd have all the time and money in the world to do that? So going through that process of answering those questions, and I always suggest that people take a lot of time with this. In our workshop that we do based on this, we spend a couple of hours digging through those and having people answer those questions and then narrow down their responses. So you start broad. You just put down every answer that you can possibly think of to those 6 questions. And then what we do in our workshop is we actually have people narrow that down to 10. Pick your top 10. And then we have them apply this 4-part superhero test or superpower test to get down to maybe their top 2 or 3, which identifies their greatest, most contributing talents and skills. And we can go over that test too, if you'd like. That one I do know. I don't have to look that up in my book, because it's only 4, so I can always remember that one. So the 4 parts of that qualify something to be an actual ordinary superpower is the first part is that it comes naturally to you. So after you've answered all those questions and you have this huge list of possibilities, all these potential strengths that could be a superpower, the first thing to ask yourself is, does it come naturally to me? And that doesn't mean you're born with it. That just means that right now, at this moment in time in your life, it feels natural to you. It's easy for you to use it. And that could be a lot of different things. That could be something you are born with. It could be something you've developed along the way to the point where it's just natural to you now. And we have both of those, I think, throughout our lives. So I don't necessarily believe that our superpowers are things that we're born with. I think they can be, but they don't always have to be. The second thing to ask yourself is, do I have an elevated level of this ability, talent, or skill? As I'm evaluating that big list of potential strengths, which ones am I better at than most people that I know? And I don't have to be the best in the world at those things, but when I look around my circle of influence, do I have an elevated level of that skill or ability? For me, like idea generation, brainstorming, when I look around, even my own team at work, my friends, family, like I just enjoy doing that kind of stuff a lot more than most people do. So that's an elevated thing for me. The third part of the test is, does it help other people? I think to qualify as a superpower, it can't just benefit you. It has to benefit the world around you. Doesn't have to benefit the world, just benefit your world in some way, the people right around you. And then fourth, and maybe most importantly, and I always say use this one as the tiebreaker if all things being equal, is, do I enjoy using this talent, ability, or skill? Is it fun for me? And fun is different for everybody, right? Fun could be like woohoo, rah-rah, fun, playtime. But it could also be like, I get really good results and that's fun for me when I use it. It's just whatever your definition of fun. But do you enjoy using it? Does it give you energy? And another way to look at it is when you use that ability a lot, what kind of tired are you? There's two kinds of tired. There's the completely depleted, I never want to do this again kind of tired. And then there's that was so much fun. It took so much out of me. As soon as I'm done resting up a little bit, I can't wait to go back and do it again. That kind of tired. That's the kind of tired you're looking for. That indicates there's something special about that ability, talent, or skill for you. That's why I like to use it as a tiebreaker, because I think in the end, if it's going to be something that lights us up, it'll be something that's fun and enjoyable for us to use and gives us energy rather than totally depletes us of energy over time. That was a long-winded answer there.
But it was, so now they don't need the first, they don't need that chapter out of the book, but the rest of it is.
and that was the free chapter anyways.
Yeah, that was a free chapter anyway. So, but man, you should see the other stuff in the book. Oh my gosh, it makes that stuff so awesome. I read the whole book. Okay.
You did
over a couple of paragraphs, really.
And you didn't just read the freebie version; you actually bought it.
I bought.
So you're amazing.
Yes, I did. That's right. But I bought the Kindle version because it was faster. And I can make my iPad read it to me. But,
well, I have to give you guys kudos. I'm telling you, like most people I've been on podcasts and other interviews, they don't read the book. And I get it. A lot of people don't have time or whatever. So I appreciate when people actually take the time and dive in. And
I got to tell you, from the point that we started talking about this, and because we like to know about our authors, so we can. So we can talk to him. And you sent it, and then we postponed for so long. If we hadn't read the book, we would have been totally.
We'd be
yeah. It was like, I think we had like a month and a half to read this book. There's no excuse.
Yeah. I think at some point we said we better set a date so that we read the book.
Exactly. It did too.
Well, I had to do that when I was writing it. I better set a date so I finished it.
Yeah. I used to do that when I was, I used to work in print, and so I'd make sure that I had the book read. But sometimes that meant scheduling 3 weeks out, and okay, now I got time. So Kelvin, you texted me last night. You texted me last night and said that you had to find your superpowers. So I'm wondering if like this last 10, 15 minutes here has helped you any.
Well, sort of. They would, yeah, a little bit. A couple of them. I don't know how many I have. Right. I go through. I got to tell you, I keep a kudos file. I've got one on my computer right now, and I back it up routinely because it's a lot of emails over a lot of time where people have called and thanked me for things or told me how I made them feel or something like that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Whenever I'm feeling, I don't know, not as great as I think I should, I have to go back and read some of that stuff and some of the stuff that people have said to me so I could remember, I'm not really the loser I'm feeling like right now because I've done this and I've done this and I've done this and I've made this person feel like this. So one of my superpowers is actually the ability to make people feel valued in a conversation.
That's great.
And I enjoy doing that. And to make and I'm also a life coach. So, even before the formal coach training, I did that all the time. So I used to be, I don't know, there used to be some others, but now it's like, I'm doing so much. I have to figure out, okay, what really are, and you made a good point of talking about this in the book and the workbook, which is magnificent. That's a great way for people to remember what they read in the book. To fine tune those. So what am I really using at this point that's making a difference? I used to have incredible focus. But normally when someone, I volunteer to be president a lot. What superpower is that? Is there a name for that one? Does it
masochism, I think, is the superpower.
Oh, that's the M word.
Yeah. You like getting beat up? I don't know.
I like bringing groups together. I think I'm very good in helping groups feel valued and learn to work together and improving morale and stuff like that.
But see, I love the way that you've articulated those because those are your words, right? You've kind of figured it out for yourself. And it's not anything necessarily terribly fancy. Like one of the things I think that holds people back is they feel like they have to really nail it down and make it sound really good, what my superpowers are. And I think, whatever comes naturally out of you, the way that you would talk about it is the best way to articulate those things. And what you said, you would never find that in most job descriptions. You would never find, making people feel valued. You would never find that in a lot of the strengths tests and things that you might take, like Strengths Finder or the DISC profiles, all of that. And that's one of the things I wanted to do differently here, was to make this something very personal to you, to every single person who writes it. We're not putting you in a bucket with a whole bunch of other people and calling you pioneers or woos or whatever, whatever the labels are that we put on all those buckets and all those other tests. And those tests have value, and I'm not bashing those at all.
Absolutely.
I've taken them all, and they all have value for different things. But I wanted something that would be so personal to you that you could articulate, that then by being so authentic in your articulation, which I think you just did, I totally get it. I totally got what you said. I totally understand what that power is because of the way that you said it and the way that you'd already thought about it. So good for you. That's amazing. And that's what I want people to get to, is that. Imagine you say that in an interview, and then you can back it up with a little explanation to say, this is what I mean by that, and this is where I think it best applies. Do you have a place like that here? I mean, that's powerful stuff.
That is. And that's why I became a life coach, because that's me. That's what I do. So, and
you probably help, as a life coach, you probably help people do the superpower work, even if you weren't calling it that. You probably help them figure out what their strengths are and what's going to light them up, and where to find, how to go out and find that, kill it, drag it home, all of that.
I'm going to be a lot better at it after this interview. I'll tell you that. Absolutely, because this was awesome.
Well, I want to know Josh's superpower now that I've heard yours.
I've identified a few. One is I'm very good at breaking down complex, I want to say organisms, but mechanisms, and explaining them simply.
Yeah.
When I was a reporter, one of the beats I was on was combined sewer overflows. And I don't know if you know what those are, but
no.
At least in the Northeast, and I assume this is throughout most of the country, but when the cities were first popping up in the 1850s through the 1880s or so, when manufacturing was coming in, and they were building sewer systems, they built them such that when all the waste that was going into the sewer system, eventually, when it would rain, they needed a place to put everything, so they just opened up into rivers. So, for 100 years, whenever we got a storm and the wastewater would overflow the pipes, it would just wind up in the river. So now, obviously, now we know that that's not the safest place to be putting human waste. We'd rather redirect it into treatment plants, but they didn't plan for. When you were building a city in 1890, you didn't plan to have 50, 70, 100,000 people. You planned on a couple thousand. Yeah. So now it's time to retrofit cities, and I mean they're just doing it now over the last 25 years or so. That was one of the processes I had to start breaking down, and I figured out as I got older that I could do this with a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Superpowers, I think a lot of people think that a talent or ability only has a very narrow use. And when they can broaden out and start looking beyond kind of what their current situation is or what they always thought that, that ideal role was for that power, you can find uses for your powers lots of different ways. And that's why I kind of like it when people keep their powers maybe a little more on the generic side. Mm-hmm. So you could say, look, I'm really great at simplifying things, or I'm really great at organizing vast amounts of information. That allows you to kind of apply that a lot of different places, as opposed to saying, I make wicked good spreadsheets, right? Like, because then it's like a single type task. But organizing vast amounts of information, maybe you're really good at making spreadsheets, but really the power, the skill there for you might be that organizational skill that then you could apply outside of the world of Excel and spreadsheets.
And Josh is a logic guy. So when you were talking in your book about your, I forget who the tech guy, I forget his name, but anyway, you talk about he was your systems guy, he was your process guy.
Yeah.
And that's Josh. He's the, I'm over here, and Josh is the, okay, little reality based here. You need to look at this, and this.
Yeah.
And
Wonder Woman's bracelets, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and,
that makes
he can actually do that without making me feel like an idiot most of the time, because I can go off on some tangents. But
Kelvin, just for the record, anytime you feel like an idiot, you're putting that word in your head. It's not me.
Right. My counselor always says, nobody can make you feel any way.
That's right. I tell people that all the time.
It's all about you.
However, yeah. But anyway, so he's very logic based, and one of the jointly for us, the superpowers that we have is that we actually are very, very different people. We have very different people, but somehow we have.
Some would say you're black and white, even.
That that's the long and the short of it too. So it's all black and white. I've got a joke for you, but we'll work on that another. But we've had this friendship of ours. We've had since it's been about 10 years now, right?
Probably more like 15. Yeah,
more like 15. All right. See, and it doesn't even seem like a long time. But despite the fact that we have very, very differing views on a lot of stuff, we can have amazing conversations. Which gives us the ability. I mean, I may not always agree with his, and vice versa, his end point, but I know his thinking process. I understand much more about him, and that's just really awesome. There's not a lot of people. Well, I haven't found a lot of people that you can have just a conversation about anything, and come away with knowledge and stuff, because a lot of people get caught up in whatever it is they think, and then suddenly you have an argument, and I'm not up for that.
Yeah.
He's very intelligent.
Actually, you just illustrated another really amazing part of discovering your superpowers, and that's when you know your powers and then you know the powers of other people. Like the two of you, you know these about each other. You probably knew each other's superpowers more clearly than your own at some points, because we tend to recognize things in other people that we don't always see in ourselves. Right. But the real power of a superpower, once you've sort of discovered what your powers are and you start maximizing and leveraging those as much as you can, then to take on bigger things, bigger missions, and to do even more interesting, impactful things, you have to partner up with other people, just like you've done here. Now you're creating something together by the use of these combined superpowers that you couldn't have created all by yourself, either one of you. So, I call that finding your super friends, is finding other people that complement your abilities and skills. You can find ones that help you multiply. Like I might find other people that are a lot like me so that we can do more of what we're doing. But we also might partner up with people completely opposite of us that have totally different superpowers in order to achieve things we never could have achieved, or to go a different direction than we were able to go by ourselves. So, you guys are like the epitome of the whole superpower movement here.
Oh, you're so nice. Thank you. I like the way you illustrated that through your book, because I was going to get to the 4 phases that you talk about. To do with the the superpowers, like the activate and the rest of that process, which I'll let you talk about if it's
sure.
And but I was impressed with that. So
yeah, that's just a process of going through, evolving your powers, I guess, over time. Starting with discovery, it's discover, activate, enhance, and multiply. So the first thing you have to do is you have to discover what your powers are. And if you already sort of know what they are, I think most people can really benefit from articulating what their powers are and really owning those powers. And that is sort of step number one. I'm always surprised at how many people, though, really don't know what their powers are. And every time I go through this, and every time somebody sends me a note about the book or comes through one of our workshops, and they say, "Gosh, I don't know what my superpowers are." I always think that's really odd, because don't we all have abilities and talents and skills that sort of stand out? And some people just really can't see it in themselves. Maybe it was beaten out of them too much as kids, and then they just really can't recognize it. So step one is discover what those are. And part of that discovery to me is articulation, is making sure that you can talk about it in a way that you understand it and other people understand it as well. Then activating your powers is being proactive about using your powers. Most of us use our powers already, but we use them very reactively. It's sort of that default operating system we have, and it sort of kicks in automatically. We don't think too much about it. But what if you could do that proactively? You know, it's sort of like a thermostat in your house. You know, it'll kick on automatically when it gets above or below a certain temperature. But if I want it to be 78 degrees in my house and it's not, I can proactively change that thermometer and make it do what I want it to do. Just like I think we can proactively use our, I used the word thermometer. It's actually thermostat, but you know what I mean. I think we can proactively put our powers into practice so that we can achieve the results that we want to get with those once we become conscious of what they are. So
here's a silly question.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a silly question, but illustrate that for me. Give me an example for the audience.
Sure. Well, I'll use one of my own powers because those are easiest to talk about because I'm closest to those. So my three biggest superpowers are exploring new things, simplifying things, and then communicating ideas through writing and speaking. And you can see those are not like the most eloquently stated, by the way, like simplifying things. That doesn't seem like that's like the most articulate way to say a superpower, but that's the way it comes out of my mouth and out of my mind, so that's what I use.
There you go.
So that one alone is it's kind of similar to Josh's about taking complex things and making them simple to understand. And I found that I did that automatically, but I did it for myself because there were so many things I just needed to understand, or I needed a process that I could follow. When I started my business, I actually did that for my entire business, but it was really for my benefit. So everything I did in my business, I tried to make it as simple as possible so that one man could do it, because my business was a one-man band for a long time. So the way that I arranged the office was, to benefit me so that I could move things around a lot easier by myself, because I have a conference center that we run. So it has to be rearranged every day. So one of the things I did to make it simple was to put sliders on or wheels on all the furniture so that I could push things around with one person. We didn't have to lift anything. So one person could do it all. Well, over time, I started realizing that power of simplifying ideas and processes really helped other people too, because it dawned on me eventually that not everybody has that ability. And so I look for opportunities now where somebody's struggling with something, or when I see something that is just overly complex and doesn't need to be, then I will step in and I will offer assistance. Sometimes I can even charge people to do that, and there's nothing wrong with charging for your superpowers. I also do some coaching as well, and a big part of what I ended up coaching people on is that I just see the complexity that they've introduced in their life that doesn't need to be there, and then I help them simplify that. So that was taking it from just benefiting me because I was just doing it automatically to make my life easier, to now I look for opportunities outside myself with other situations and other people to simplify those processes or those, whatever they are, whatever's complicated and complex in somebody's life. So that's one good example of that.
Great example. Thank you.
Okay. The third, I'm looking at my book again, like I need to know this one too. The third part, discover is the first one, activate, enhance is the third part. And enhancing is sort of a two-part process. Enhancing has to do with making your powers as powerful as they can be. And I'm a big believer that no matter how great a superpower is, it can always be improved. You can always get better at it. In fact, it might even be a qualification of a superpower, is that it's something you can still get better at no matter how good you are. So there are lots of ways to do that. Workshops, seminars, books, whatever. We do podcasts, ongoing learning, ongoing skill building in that area. All of that stuff is ways to enhance your superpowers to make them stronger. Mm-hmm. And then the flip side of that is to minimize your kryptonite and the downsides also that come with the superpower. So there are two different things. I look at kryptonite as those outside forces, much like the kryptonite in the Superman story was this outside element that weakened Superman's powers. Well, we also have kryptonite in our lives, and it's usually other people or situations that suck our power away from us, or those situations we find ourselves in where we're just not living our authentic self, or we're not able to bring our full powers to play. And I'm a big believer in figuring out ways to minimize that, because a lot of times we can't always just totally eliminate it. If we can, that's great. But a lot of times it's minimizing our exposure to it. Like if it's another person, say a person in your office that you have no power of, firing or getting away from, but we almost always have the power of minimizing our exposure to those people. We can limit our meetings with them. We can keep things short with them. We can sometimes even limit our communication to email or something so we don't have to be as face-to-face with those people. That's just one example of kryptonite. Another kryptonite that a lot of people mention to me is time. I don't have enough time to do everything I want. It's sort of like this, and it sucks their energy, sucks their power. Or if it's busyness might be their kryptonite. And again, since one of my superpowers is helping people simplify things, it always breaks down to how much people have committed to, or how poorly they manage their time. That actually ends up being a way for them to kind of fix that kryptonite. Like figure out how to manage your time better, figure out how to say no to things, figure out how to prioritize things in your life, and then that kryptonite will be minimized for you eventually. So that's one thing about enhancing your superpowers is minimizing your kryptonite. And then the other side of that is I think every superpower also comes with a downside. It's kind of like if you think about a superpower as a pendulum, that when you're using your power at full strength, that pendulum swings way over to one side, which means that on the other side of that swing, there's probably this big vacuum or hole of some sort. There's some sort of collateral damage that can occur. It doesn't always occur, but can occur. For me, when I kick into full-on brainstorming mode, I know that can have collateral damage with people that don't like to do that, or that want to get to an answer quickly or need a decision right now. And so I have to be very careful about that and very aware that not everybody is going to participate in that superpower like I am. And I have to just be sensitive to that in other people. A lot of times if you notice, anybody that has a very strong strength or characteristic can sometimes rub people the wrong way, or certain people the wrong way. Sometimes people that are even overly personable or whatever, that may be their superpower, but to somebody who doesn't enjoy that kind of personality, that rubs them the wrong way. So I think self-awareness goes a long way to minimizing the downsides of our superpowers as well. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the fourth step in the process is multiplying, which we hit on a little bit earlier. To me, the way to multiply your superpowers is to then figure out who else has powers either similar to you, so you can expand what you do with those powers, or who has powers that are complementary to yours, or even completely opposite of yours sometimes, that helps you achieve things that you couldn't have achieved just by yourself. In the superhero world, when you've got Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman and all of them together become the Super Friends or the Justice League, they're able to fight crime in ways together that they couldn't do it independently. That's why they kind of came together. In the latest version of the Justice League, there is this, supernatural force that they have to fight, and none of them could fight it together, but could fight it independently. But when they get together, they join forces. Then they have this ability to fight back all of a And that story plays out over and over. Anytime you get, multiple heroes involved, it becomes into this sort of multiplication effort of together we are stronger than we are separately. And I think that's an echo of life. That's just the way we are. I use this example in my workshop of this woman in the Detroit area who is, it appears almost as though she is single-handedly changing, one of the ghetto areas of Detroit. But the truth is she has employed an army of people with various talents and skills and abilities, from just hand laborers who can clear brush and tear down buildings to urban planners who know how to put the right infrastructure in place to make, her part of the city into what it needs to be. And she's just sort of the catalyst. That's her superpower, is being that sort of catalyst that motivates everybody to get involved. And by using all these different people and places, or these different abilities and skills, they're transforming, what used to be basically a ghost town full of boarded up buildings and crack houses and everything else into a place that people really want to live and they feel proud of their community. And that's a really cool example. Her name's Mama Shu. You can actually look her up on YouTube and see different stories about her from Ellen and CBS News. But just doing amazing things by using their superpowers and then partnering up with super friends to achieve even more. And we all can do that. I think, sometimes, we tend to be lone wolves. I'm a lone wolf kind of person. So I have to force myself to look for super friends and to expand that ability. I often say I could achieve so much more if I could just get, out of that lone wolf mentality more. But that's sort of my default mode. So I have to force myself out of it.
That's probably a piece of my kryptonite too.
I was going to say we both have those. We both have that as well.
Yeah.
Which most superheroes, if you look at the superhero stories, they're all lone wolves, and they all resist coming together too when they tell those stories.
Yeah.
But they eventually do.
Mark down my kryptonite. That's one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I never really considered that to be kryptonite, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it keeps you from using your powers at full strength.
Yep.
Being a lone wolf. Yep.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to circle back to was early on you said that you hit kind of a plateau in your business, and you realized that you were taking on more admin than anything else. You kind of dropped the creative part of it, which is what you enjoyed. I know there are a lot of people who at that point might just scrap the business and start a new one, whereas other people might say, "Oh, now it's time to hire out the admin management side and do the creativity." How did you get past your plateau?
I was so tempted to shut it down. I mean, I was exploring how to sell it. My lease was coming up, and I entertained the idea of just wrapping it up, shutting it down, finding something else to do with my life. It was pretty dark and bad there for a while. And I tried not to let that show to the world and to my employees, because I had a team. I wasn't just all by myself at that point. I had a team of 6 or 8 people, and still do. But I was such a lone wolf, I really wasn't even letting them do their jobs very well. They were just sort of like warm bodies around to try to just help me when I would get overwhelmed, and run some of the stuff. I offloaded all of the really light stuff, but some of the more heavy stuff of literally running the business and looking at the numbers and handling finances and all of that, I was still kind of overseeing way too much of that. I was managing way too much of the business, and I'm just not meant to be a manager. I'm meant to be a creator and a builder. That's one thing I know in my deep down in my soul now, is that I'm just meant to be a creator. And if I manage anything, I should be kicked. I should be fired immediately. And one of the things that sort of prompted me along the way was we host this event called LeaderCast every year, which is this day-long event broadcast live from Atlanta with these leadership speakers all day long. And we watch it at our space with 100 people we invite in, and it's a great event. But there's a speaker named Andy Stanley who a couple years ago asked this question, posed this question to the crowd, and he said he had it on a plaque behind his desk to remind him every day to ask himself this question. And it was this: if they fired me tomorrow and hired a replacement better than me, what would that person do that I'm not doing right now? And I spent several hours grappling with that question. And the number one thing that I came up with for myself was that person would delegate all of the crap that you shouldn't be doing and that someone else could be doing a lot better. And so that was part of that catalyst of, all right, it's time for me to build this team into something that really works for the business, and as importantly, really works for me as the business owner, so that I can leverage my strengths better and not stay stuck in this no man's land of being the administrator manager that was slowly sort of sucking my soul. So yeah, so I started to build out my team that way, and I eventually took one of my people who was entirely capable the entire time, but I finally, after her working there for 4 years, I finally elevated her to be my chief operating officer, and now she actually runs the business, and I get to be that creative visionary force that I used to be, and things are so much better that way. And she's way better at running it. Yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, it's just that plays to her strength. She's a very organized, detail-oriented person who likes to make sure everything's running properly and all of that, and I just like to build stuff.
Organization is not my strength.
Well, there's that happens in large corporations too. There's a saying that we rise to the level of our mediocrity, and normally what that means is that you do really well at something, so they promote you, and you do really well at that, so they promote you, and eventually you get to oversee all these people who are doing the stuff that you were really good at. You're really bad at the oversight, so you just get stuck there because they're not going to fire you because you're so good at everything else you did.
Yeah,
and so you had luckily you had the opportunity to put somebody in that position where you had got all the way up to doing the stuff that you weren't good at and didn't like doing, and you were able to put somebody else in that position and say, here, you do it. And that person is very good at it, and you could go back to what you like doing.
And I think one of the things that people need to understand is that's not an overnight process either. Like that took a pretty big learning curve, and I think we're still learning it. It's been over a year since I put that person in place in that role, and we're still feeling it out and learning along the way. I always tell people in my workshops, and this always gets a laugh because I think because everybody relates to it. How we have superpowers, and then we have strengths, and we have those things that only we can really do. And then we have other things that we're pretty good at doing, and we can survive doing those things. But the problem is when we don't elevate ourselves into that superpower realm, and we only stay doing the things that we're pretty good at doing, then we tend to just get more and more of those things, right? And that's one of the dangers of not using your superpowers as much as you could, is you end up getting more of the work that you really probably didn't want to do in the first place, but you were pretty good at because you needed to be. Mm-hmm. And then the part that gets the laugh is worse than that. If you're really good at that, then you get promoted to be the manager of the thing you never wanted to do in the first place. Because it's so true. It happens everywhere. It's like it's exactly what you just said. And it's sad. And then people find themselves, 5, 10, 15 years down the line wanting to quit their job and go work at a hardware store because they're on the wrong path in life and they've been there for a long time. Thank God it only took me 7 years to figure that out.
So you write in the book a fair bit about passion and happiness. Where in your learning process, as you were discovering all this stuff for yourself, did those start coming in, and how did you figure that out?
I was so passionate and so excited about my business for the first 10 years. It was just build, and I was just loving it, and it was going well, and it was growing, and people loved it, and it fed my ego. It did everything it ever should do, right? Mm-hmm. And I actually had this coach at this time. Stupid life coaches, man, they just mess everything up. He asked me this question that it changed everything for me, and not in a good way. And he didn't mean it to do that. That's the problem, is I actually took it the wrong direction as I look back on it now. He asked me, about 10 years into my business, he said, hey, what's your mission? What's your mission with this business? And I said, well, to build it. It's always been my mission to build it. And he kind of looked around and he said, looks to me like it's already built. What's your mission now? And so I really didn't know how to answer that. So the answer I eventually came up with is, well, now I need to really run this place that I've built. And so I gave myself that assignment, a mission, and it was the wrong mission for me. So you have to be very careful of the missions that you're on. And then what I did over time is I finally realized, like, as I was that frog in the hot water that we mentioned earlier, there was a point where I realized, man, I don't have the same joy, passion, excitement about my work anymore. And it was affecting other parts of my life, my relationship with my wife, my family life, it just, everything started to feel kind of gray. I called it the fog. I just felt like I entered a fog that I couldn't get out of. I mean, life wasn't horrible. I was still profitable as a business. People still loved it. I still enjoyed pieces and parts of what I did, but I was in this fog that didn't feel the same, that really passionate, excited, driven kind of feeling. And I got to the point where I really missed feeling that way. And that drove me to do this work. It drove me to seek out counseling as well. And through that process, I started realizing, like, oh yeah, life really could be different than this. Life could be a lot more passionate and excited. It used to be. And then the way I described it is, as I emerged from that, and when you're in it, it's really hard to see. When you have that lack of passion, that lack of excitement, it's kind of hard to figure out how to get out of that. And I think you need outside help. You need, not just work like this, but I'm a big believer in counseling to help you kind of break through, or life coaching sometimes to help you get past some of those obstacles and out of that fog that you find yourself in, because you just sometimes are not capable of working it all out yourself. But my description now is, as I look back, you know that there's a commercial on TV, I think it's for Claritin, allergy medicine. And they're playing the commercial. Everything looks fairly normal. And then they pull back the bottom of the screen and everything is super colorful and vibrant. And you just didn't even notice how dull it was before. And I think once you start to pull that screen back for yourself and you start to see how colorful life could be, you just want to do everything you can to, like, pull that screen all the way back and work your way out of that fog. That's the point I got, where I finally said, I'm missing some color in my life. I'm missing some passion, some excitement. And I need to get back to that, because, I mean, that's, to me, life is short. It should be fun and passionate and exciting. And it doesn't mean that nothing bad ever happens, or that you won't go through periods where it's not like all rainbows and butterflies. But I think, we should be able to expect a fair amount of rainbows and butterflies if we put our effort in the right place.
Rainbows and butterflies.
That's my next book. Rainbows and butterflies.
All right. Okay. Well, let us know when that's coming out. We can come back and have you talk for that one. See. But yeah. Wow. Well, we've certainly covered a lot, and I really
covered so much. Nobody even has to buy the book now. They just have to listen to this podcast.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because if they're like me, you hear it once, it sounds really good, and 3 days later, it's like, what was it he said?
Yeah.
So, you can get the Kindle version. It comes, like, right now. Is it on Audible yet?
I'm working on that. There's a problem with the file. I've submitted it to Audible. Hopefully by the time you guys get this published, I will have that ready to go. Okay, it's done. It's all recorded. It's just not meeting Audible specs yet.
Josh loves to take our guests and promote their books on Audible so that people can have a reason to take advantage of that 30-day free trial and get that book and stuff. So, like, quick.
All right. I'll get it up. I'll work on it today.
Okay. Who was that handles your stuff? That's Eve. That's your wife.
That's my wife. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who's the one who's in charge, really?
Eve is the one who's ultimately in charge. I call her my not so silent partner.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much I appreciate all your questions and your earnest and honest interest in the work and the book. It means a lot.
Well, Mark, where can people find you online? Where do you like to hang out the most? Where can they connect?
Yeah. I have a website. It's at markhenson.me. That's HENSON, markhenson.me. And again, get that free chapter too by adding a / and free chapter after that, and you can download the free chapter. So that's kind of my online HQ. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Excuse me. I'm on Facebook a lot. I even have a private Facebook group called A Superpowered Life. That's my Instagram handle as well, as A Superpowered Life. And I just like to interact and talk with people a lot in those forums about, their superpowers and what's good in their life and what's happening that's positive and real.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll have all those links and show notes too, so people can, they don't have to go back and write that down.
Well, we will. Josh normally asks a question that he didn't ask this time, or maybe I just snatched it out of his face right now. But normally, so what is there that you would like to say to our audience that you didn't have a chance to say? The one thing that you really think would be a powerful impact that people need to hear before you sign off today with us?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'd say that it's probably the underlying theme of the book, the thing that I really wrote the book for. So there's what the book's about, and then there's what the book's really about. The book is about ordinary superpowers, but what it's really about is, if I had a message to leave to people with my dying breath, it would be, do everything you can to be 100% you, whatever that is. Be authentic, be real, be true to yourself. Love who that is, because I think we can figure out who we are, and we can be authentic and do all of that, and we can actually not like that person and not love that person. So once you figure out who you really are, love that person, and then make a difference using that person in this world. Not the person you think you should be, but the person you really are, because you'll have the biggest impact that way.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, this is fun. You guys are great at asking questions.
Pass it on to all your famous friends.
I will promote the crap out of this one.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get you a link when it's up and all that. And yeah, I mean, we're happy to take introductions if you've got anybody else in your network who you think would be a good guest.
Yeah, I got some friends I'll send your way.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
Awesome.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, see you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, and we will see you next week. Bye.
A Better Humanhood production.